Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. This is part 4 of a 5-part series I'm calling The Foundations of Wealth. Over the last 3 episodes, we've built the foundation. In part 1, we defined money. We learned that money is simply a medium of exchange that allows us to trade our labor for goods and services. We also talked about how gold and silver have all of the properties that make it a good money. In part 2, we asked why gold and silver were removed from circulation since they fulfilled that role so well. We discovered that it wasn't because they stopped working, it's because our monetary system gradually changed over time. And in part 3, we focused mostly on gold, honestly. We looked at why I believe gold has preserved purchasing power throughout history and why it continues to serve as one of the greatest stores of wealth ever known. But today we arrive on a new question. If gold does all of that, why own gold and silver? And maybe the better question is, do you even need silver? And I know this is going to be a hot take, but the answer is, I don't think everyone does. Congratulations to South Haven Coins and Bullions for being the first to get to my comment section in my last video. Racing to the first comment in my videos is actually a very strong way to support the channel because it promotes engagement for my videos as soon as I post them, so thank you all for the support. When I first started stacking precious metals, I bought a few ounces of silver, and on the same day I took my family out to dinner. At that time, an ounce of silver cost almost exactly the same cost of taking my family of 4 out to dinner. Years later, the silver price changed, the dollar has changed, and restaurant prices have changed. But what's interesting is that if I took my family of 4 back to the same place for dinner, the same dinner would cost me roughly 1 ounce of silver still. To me, that's the easiest way to understand silver. 1 ounce, 1 family dinner, 1 recognizable amount of purchasing power. As someone who was just getting out of homelessness only months before, this physical representation of our next meal became very important to me. Not only could it act as our next meal if things turned for the worse again, which they did. On a couple of occasions, I started my stack over from the beginning until I learned some financial literacy. But this 1 ounce of silver also represented a meal that I could give someone. A meal that I could pass down to my children's children so that one day they could feed their family if they needed to. And slowly I began to realize that an ounce of silver represented a relatively small amount of wealth frozen in time, an amount that's easy to understand, easy to save, and easy to visualize. So yes, the reason to stack silver is strong for many of us. Simply, it's what we can afford. But today I want to take a little bit of a different approach. Let's say you're in the different class of people, the people who can afford gold and a lot of it. If you are one of those out there who are stacking American gold eagles, maybe several ounces at a time, do you need silver? I honestly think the answer is maybe not. And this isn't saying that silver's not good. I think the bigger question is whether or not silver solves a problem that you actually have. I don't think of gold and silver as competitors. I simply think of them as different tools. Gold is incredibly efficient at storing large amounts of wealth. It's compact, it's value dense, it's easy to store, it's easy to transport. And silver solves different problems. Silver is more divisible. It allows you to preserve smaller amounts of purchasing power. It behaves differently than gold, and because of that, it creates different opportunities. Neither one is better, they simply are designed for different jobs. Here's another way to think about it. Silver is almost like hyper-fractional gold. Today, 1 ounce of silver represents roughly the same amount of value as a very tiny fraction of an ounce of gold. It's actually close to maybe half a gram of gold. You could buy that half a gram of gold, but the problem is that as gold gets smaller, the premiums usually get larger. By the time you're buying such tiny fractional pieces, you're often paying a much higher premium for the small amount of gold, and silver can fill that gap. If someone wants to preserve $50, $100, or a few $100s worth of purchasing power at a time, silver often becomes one of the most practical ways to do it. So that's where the question comes from. If you are not trying to preserve small amounts of value, then is silver even practical for you? And I think it might be. Honestly, I think silver can be a way to protect your gold. This is actually one of my favorite reasons to own silver. Not because I think silver can replace gold, but because I think silver actually protects it. In today's numbers, let's say you were in a situation where you needed almost exactly $5,000. And a lot of people use the example of an emergency, but let's just say it's some sort of business opportunity or something that can't wait a few more days or weeks for you to liquidate another asset. And this high liquidity property of precious metals is one of the biggest reasons you should own them, but that's a topic for another video. Let's say you needed that $5,000 and you decided you were going to sell some precious metals. At today's prices, if you exclusively stacked gold, say 1 ounce gold, you would have to sell 2 ounces, $8,000 worth of gold to make that $5,000 purchase. You'd be losing a $3,000 position in precious metals. And of course, now that's the exact reason why there's fractional gold. You could look at a 1/4 ounce or a 1/10 ounce gold, and that will solve a lot of that headache. And this is where the discussion of premiums comes in. Even going as big as a 1/10 ounce gold can have a higher premium than silver. So if you're trying to make that $5,000 mark at today's prices with today's buyback premiums, you might have to sell 1.3 ounces of gold, or maybe even 1 ounce, a 1/4 ounce, and a 1/10 ounce. Simply put, in almost any situation, it's going to be more efficient for you to be selling a large amount of silver rather than a very small fractional piece of gold. The most efficient way to solve this $5,000 problem in today's market, accounting for premiums and spread, would most likely look like a 1 ounce gold, a 1/4 ounce gold, and maybe 3 to 5 ounces of silver. And this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. There are different reasons for holding silver, and if the only reason you hold silver is flexibility, you don't need thousands of ounces, but others might. If you're already primarily stacking gold and even 1 ounce gold pieces, maybe about 100 ounces of silver is enough. Maybe it's not. Maybe just enough to fine-tune a future sale. Enough to avoid selling more gold than necessary. Enough to give yourself options. And that's all silver does. That's all silver needs to do. But also, there are people who don't only want to own gold. There's more than one reason people choose to own silver. Silver behaves very differently than gold. Historically, silver has a trend to be a lot more volatile. Sometimes that works in your favor, and sometimes it doesn't. But because it moves differently, it can create different opportunities. Some investors appreciate having exposure to both metals exactly for that reason. For me, I use silver to buy gold. I dollar cost average into silver, and then when the gold to silver ratio makes moves, I use that silver to what I call silver cost average into gold. Really, the diversification is where I land. I don't believe everyone needs silver. If someone wants to preserve large amounts of wealth and gold accomplishes everything they need, gold alone can be a perfectly reliable source. But for many people, silver adds flexibility, it adds divisibility, it adds another tool in the toolbox. And to me, that's what diversification really means. Not owning random things, owning different tools to solve different problems. Gold stores large amounts of value remarkably well, and silver helps preserve smaller amounts of wealth and provides the flexibility when you need it. They have worked together for thousands of years because they are different, not because they're the same. So, do you need silver? Not necessarily. But should you understand silver? Absolutely, because understanding the role that each metal plays will help you to stop asking which one is better, and you'll start asking which one solves the problem in front of you. For me, gold is the foundation, silver is the flexibility, and together they allow me to preserve purchasing power in different ways and at different scales. And that's why I continue to own both. In the next and final episode of Foundations of Wealth, we are going to be asking the question, what is wealth actually for? And this is actually all leading into a live interview with another YouTuber named Kalilo on Saturday, August 1st, 2026 at 3 p.m. Texas time. We will be discussing legacy. Because in the end, gold and silver aren't the destination. They're simply tools that help us preserve the value of our life's work for the people who come after us. And if you missed the live and you're seeing this afterwards, I'll make sure that it is posted on my channel or his, and there are links to be found. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Go into the comment section for any question, comments, to start a conversation or to continue one. Share the video to someone you think may like it or who needs to hear this. Subscribe if you haven't already. And to my long-term subscribers, thank you for your continual support. If you haven't visited josephsreserves.com, make sure you go check out my merchandise, my zip-up bags, the coffee mugs, and the It's Today Again coffee. But most of all, thank you so much for watching. And just remember, every ounce adds up. So no matter how small, just keep stacking.